I don't know if it was the wisest decision I've ever had. I came into 2022 wanting to, level up my fitness a little bit after the pandemic, after an ankle injury, and the Goggins challenge sort of crossed my path. And it's this challenge where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So in total, 48 miles, but as a part of that, you're having to manage sleep and nutrition and hydration in these really small sort of chunks rather than just running the straight 48 miles. And as a non-runner who would probably maybe run 5 miles in total in one sitting, I thought that this could be fun.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre. If you're active at all, whether you're running or simply out walking for the day, you've probably experienced one of the number one problems that active people have, and that's chafing. Solpre's all-new, all-natural anti-chafe balm solves that problem while feeding your skin the vital nutrients it needs to be healthy. If you'd like to stop chafing once and for all and treat your body right, go to solpre.com to check out the anti-chafe balm today. That's SOLPRI.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today has her degree in behavioral psychology. She's a former competitive equestrian athlete, currently the EY Global Lead at Athlete Programs and Women Athletes Business Network. You can find her on Twitter at Kristy P. Ingram. Welcome to the show, Kristy Ingram.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on. We've covered a lot of ground before we got recording. I don't know how much time we've talked now. Today and the other day, I don't know. We probably had a whole conversation that we could have recorded by now. So sorry to you, the listener, you missed out on all the juicy secrets. We're just going to do the boring stuff, and not do anything interesting. No, hopefully we're going to get some really good stuff. But so I want to jump back to something we had talked about the other day on a personal note for you. And I want to ask you about doing the Goggins challenge. For the uninitiated, can you explain what it is, why you decided to do such a thing, and then kind of the aftermath that we were talking about?
Yeah, it was, I don't know if it was the wisest decision I've ever had. I came into 2022 wanting to level up my fitness a little bit after the pandemic, after an ankle injury, and the Goggins challenge sort of crossed my path. And it's this challenge where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So in total, 48 miles, but as a part of that, you're having to manage sleep and nutrition and hydration in these really small sort of chunks rather than just running the straight 48 miles. And as a non-runner who would probably maybe run 5 miles in total in one sitting, I thought that this could be fun. And it's a weird form of fun. I feel really happy that I made it through. I know I surprised a bunch of my friends in actually completing it, but it was one of those things. I needed a goal in the first sort of few months of the year, and I'm great at procrastinating, so I needed a short-term goal to not let myself kind of get distracted or slack off in training, and undertook this. And it was an amazing kind of experience. But the hilarious part for me anyway was I ran the 48th mile and then went, oh, I haven't thought about how to recover. Like, what do I do now? Do I sit down and put my feet in ice? I'm not quite sure how to do this. So it's been an interesting, couple of month now. Really bringing the legs back and apologizing to them profusely for what I did.
The format of it reminds me of these they're kind of growing in popularity. There's still, I would still say, a niche part of running is these last man standing style races where it's like you just have to complete a loop in an hour, whatever the format is, whether it's 6 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour, whatever the time is.
Yeah.
And then you just keep doing that until there's only one person still
Yeah.
going. That's exactly what that reminds me of. It's
Yeah.
a different kind. I haven't done one yet, but it's a different kind of game than a continuous run, because
I
the
think
start and
so.
stop nature, I think, is probably both helpful and harmful.
Yeah, after sort of the first 12 hours, I mean, I I didn't cruise through the first 24, but the first 24 were manageable, given that I'm not really a runner.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, getting back and moving after sitting down for a couple of hours, trying to, stretch and relax and give your body a chance to rest, getting back on the road, it increasingly became a longer and longer warm up,
Mm-hmm.
to feel good in that 4 miles. So, but no, you're right. Look, I don't think I could have run 48 straight.
Mm-hmm.
I just, and also that's not what I was training for. But yeah, getting the mind back to be like, hey, we need to focus, we need to do this, let's, crank it out. It wasn't easy. Towards that second night was an interesting mental battle,
Mm-hmm.
to get through.
I imagine you were taking at some point, like trying to fit in what I'll refer to as power naps, instead
Yes.
of being like, oh, I'm going to stay
Yes.
up for 48 hours. And
Oh no.
also, yeah,
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I am a champion of napping. So that is a skill I've had my whole life. So luckily I was able to, the first night was a lot of adrenaline, so I didn't really sleep much. But so towards the second afternoon, I was able to get, an hour and a half or so, in between, which was enough to kind of get you through it.
yeah, yeah.
Although those 2 a.m. runs were still not that easy, when your body was just like, why are we not in bed now?
Yeah, I can only imagine, since I haven't done it
Yeah.
and I haven't done that format before, but just
I mean,
I've run it all times a day, so I kind of know,
yeah.
like this morning I was out at 5, and it's just your body is just the optimal time of day supposedly is like mid-afternoon, in
Yep.
terms of like how limber you are
Yeah.
and kind of the rhythms of your body's daily cycle.
Yeah.
And so just thinking about, there have been times when you just have like a magical midnight kind of workout, but largely in the middle of the night
Yes.
you're gonna be just like suffering, just stiff.
Yeah.
You don't want to move. You want to go to sleep. It's dark.
That's
So
and
kudos
in
to you for making it through.
Thank you. And in New York City, obviously, I was running alone for a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going out on the road in New York in the middle of the night, from a safety perspective. So those were my treadmill runs,
Yeah.
which
Which then, yeah, it makes it even tougher.
it does. It does. There were some good Netflix shows that got me
That's what
through.
I was going to say. It's like now you got to be like, what shows are you watching? Like, how are you keeping
Exactly.
yourself engaged?
So yeah, no, it was fun. I mean, the nutrition was the tough part, and as a triathlete, I'm sure you know this, that once you get to a certain point in, especially a lengthy kind of exercise stint, you don't really feel like eating, but you know
Mm-hmm.
that that's when you really need the nutrition, right? So
Yeah.
that was my main battle, the mental aspect and then the nutrition.
Yeah, I haven't gone for that long. I used to race the like Ironman 70.3 series.
Hmm.
And then training rides would be like 5 hours, and I go out for 30 or 40-minute run after that. Um, so, out for some time, but not a 48-hour stint. And I always felt like it was always a balance between like hydration and fuel,
Yeah.
because and this is why we like developed this new sports drink line, which we won't get into because this show's
Hmm.
about you, but just I wouldn't have that hydration part right. And so I get dehydrated, and thus like I wouldn't want to eat, because my body was like, no, I need water. Like,
Yeah.
give me the water. And
Yeah.
so I always felt like if I took care of that component first, it was easier to take in fuel. Not
Yeah.
that like, not that it's always easy. Um, but just like if you don't have your whole thing going, then one can screw up the other and vice
Very
versa.
much so. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. But I don't know. Bucket list checked. On on to the next weird one. I'm not sure what that is yet.
yeah. So then maybe we have to back up and ask you about how do you get from equestrian to the Goggins challenge? Because you go from I guess I don't recall whether I'd asked you, were you like hunter jumper kind of equestrian? Like what were you doing?
Mainly dressage.
Okay.
I like precision generally as a personality trait of mine. I like things very detailed, and I can be quite analytical, and so dressage was my sport of choice.
I know what dressage is. I spent a little bit of time. That's the only time I've taken horseback riding lessons was a year in college with a dressage lady with American saddlebreds. So I have a little bit of background in it, not nearly as deep as yours. Can you give a little bit more info for the listener on what that entails?
I mean, I think it's changed a lot over the years in terms of its kind of popularity. I know Kevin Hart and Snoop Dogg did some great commentary at the Tokyo Olympics around it, so a lot of people might know it a little bit more. It's the dancing on horses, but really it has its roots in a military background. These movements really came from what you needed to teach the horses, back World War One, pre-World War One, in order to have them move where you needed to move and avoid other people on horses. So these movements really have a long history in them, but they have to be very precise. It's you move to a certain part of the arena, you do a 180 at a certain tempo, then you're changing directions really quick. So it's a lot of fast changes between movements. But honestly, for the rider, obviously you train your horse and you spend many years to get to an Olympic level for that. But the rider's job is to look like they're doing nothing, but be doing everything and giving the horse all the cues. So that's it's a little bit of like sleight of hand kind of. It looks like you're sort of just sitting there, but this horse doesn't know where it's going or what it's doing. So it really is the rider doing it with very minimal small movements.
To that notion, so if you, the listener, have ever, or in the U.S., I guess I should say, and have ever been on like a tail to snout kind of horseback ride that is typically available to, we'll say, pedestrians, it's not like that at all. At least in my opinion. I'd love you to tell me I'm wrong, but I noticed one of the things I had gone from taking these lessons back to, kind of more in that setting with the Western style trained horses. And the biggest thing I missed was just like basically the ability to ask the horse to do something by like moving your pinky, just that very subtle, because so you obviously could explain this better than I can, but there, as I understand it, the general difference in like bit control, so the horse has a bit in its mouth. With equestrian, for English style riding, like dressage, there's contact with the horse's mouth at all times, pretty much. In Western, it's really loose and it's bigger, broader motions to ask the horse to do things. So I always felt like the saddlebreds that I rode in dressage, and just it was a little bit more, I would consider like sports car tuning, like high performance, like you got to know what you're doing, or they're like the horses get frustrated and they're like, why are you saying, what are you asking me to do?
If you're have a little too much pressure on your knee, or your foot is an inch or half an inch too far back, then that doesn't mean anything to the horse, so they won't end up doing anything. But it's extremely small, even sort of like your hip placements, all that sort of stuff. They can feel all of that. So it's it's the very small fine tuning pieces. I like the race car analogy, in order to make sure that they're going in the right direction, they're doing the movement correctly, because ultimately they are still a giant animal. So if they get frustrated, they're really going to do what they want. So, that's why the years and years of training and the relationship that the rider has with the horse is so important.
Yeah, it just, in like the rider's skill matters so much. I know, like, as I got a little bit better, she kind of had a series of horses, obviously, from like the beginner one that's way more forgiving to the more show horses.
Yeah.
She'd like take me back to use like the beginner ones again after I had gotten better. And then you can, like, after you've gotten better, they respond so much easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it's an interesting way to notice that, like, you've become a better rider.
Like, oh, I've increased my skill level because I can make this horse do, step to the side, whereas before it would just ignore me. So, yeah. And they love ignoring you. They're like, no, it's not exactly the right command in the right tone of voice. I'm not moving.
Yeah. So I would like, for you, the listener, if you have any interest at all in riding, try to find some English style lessons, whatever it is, just experience the difference. I really enjoyed it as a college student. I was fortunate that there was a class that was offered. But yeah, it's a different experience than I think most people in North America have as the perception of like riding a horse, because most of it's like the Western mythology now, right?
Right, the barrel races and all that sort of stuff, which is super fun. But no, it's one of those it's technically listed as an individual sport, but I don't know, if you've ever tried to make a horse do something it doesn't want to do, it's not there for the party. So it is not an individual sport. So that relationship building style, I'm biased, obviously, because I love horses, but it's a wonderful kind of experience when you have a good bond with a horse.
So I want to transition a little bit, thinking about the time you spent in sport, what you're doing now, how that all relates together. So I want to ask you a little bit about EY.
Sure.
Who are they? What are they doing? Why were they? I don't know if it was partnered or sponsored with the Olympics for Rio. How did that all come about? Before we got going, you mentioned, in that situation, I think you mentioned, and please correct me, you guys are the only basically private company that was in some of those conversations with the IOC or something at the time. You'll correct me. I'm spouting off. I'm trying to get you to where I'd like you to talk about it. So ignore me. Listen to Kristy. She'll set the record straight.
No, I mean, so as the Rio 2016 Olympics was approaching, EY signed a local sponsorship in Brazil for those games, and we were the professional, EY in general is a professional services company, so providing everything from audit to tax to consulting services around the world. We're one of the big four. So you've likely seen a lot of our buildings around, but may not actually know who we are. So as a consulting arm of that, we signed this local sponsorship for the Rio Olympics, and really where we obviously we had the consulting services and whether it was supporting the local organizing committee with their project management, their finance, their infrastructure of the city getting prepared for the Olympics. There was a lot of deep and detailed work that went on there, but as a part of that sponsorship, we had these rights around the rings and the Olympics to really promote a platform of discussion where we wanted to bring something to unite business and sport. And where we landed on, and this piece of research is the anchor to the programs today, is looking at front foot female athletes in general, but how sport translates into the business world. And the piece of research we did was interviewing C-suite women across industry around the world, and 94% of them had sport in their background. And that clear sort of correlation between skills learned on the field and how they translate into the boardroom was really where we wanted to hang our hat on, and how we've developed the program since then. So that's where I got involved. I was consulting in Canada at the time and moved to New York to help build that sponsorship and build this conversation around knowing that athletes make great business leaders, but they're not necessarily at the rate that they should be finding their way into the business world. And it's that piece of transition as an athlete moves off the field that seems to be the sticking point. So globally, we've developed programs to support athletes to find their next career. We've hired, I think it's over 70 Olympians and Paralympians, elite athletes into EY around the world now. The programs, obviously, we can go into that, have developed over the years, but really it started in Rio, and we seemed to be the only kind of business that was looking at supporting athletes in this way. And we had some great discussions with the International Olympic Committee, other sporting bodies, business leaders, all in Rio, that has set us up quite uniquely in terms of the work that we're doing with athletes. So it's been a really exciting time, very purposeful work from my standpoint. I take great pride in what we do, and seeing the athletes come into EY, and we have mentoring programs externally as well for athlete entrepreneurs. It's been great to see them take the information and put it in their little professional tool belt and learn how to really capitalize on these skills that they have.
So one of the things in the kind of the research you had sent me, or it's on the EY website that you guys can look at. Let me see if there's like a quick. We'll put the link down in the description. It's
EY the website.
No. I was trying to the page
address?
Specifically with the research to like just make it easy to type in. It's the English language version, which makes it's ey.com/en_gl/athlete-programs.
We do have a vanity URL, so it's just ey.com/athlete programs, and that'll redirect you there.
Okay, that's all I was like. I was looking at the URLs, I was like the English language version.
I know.
I was like, that's going to make that a little bit more difficult.
The joys of big company websites. They always kind of direct you left, right, and center.
Right. Yeah. Well, so if for some reason you, the listener, speak another language and that's your preference, it looks like there is an option here for you to do that. Should you not speak English? So accessible. But so looking through that, like you mentioned, 94% of C-suite women having some kind of sport background. This is like, I don't know if there's a polite way to ask this. And I don't mean it to be a jerk, but just like, why aren't non-athletic women succeeding? I'm putting that in quotes for if you're not listening to the YouTube version or you're not watching the YouTube version.
Yeah.
Why is it that sport, if we can create some kind of causality here, because it's hard to make that inference.
I know.
But if we want to make that, if we want to make that jump, what would you attribute that to, and like why are non-sport women not as quote unquote successful in this particular realm?
I don't know if it's that they're not successful. I just think the athlete's skill set that is learned on the field increases the speed at which they make it to those leadership positions. So, I don't think it's if you don't have sport, you're you're doomed in professional. I really do think that it just adds to a leader's ability, one, to reach those leadership positions more quickly, and two, do it in a way that is unique, I would say. So it's just a different path. And we've seen that in our own athletes, in terms of, we've had athletes, a lot of our athletes hit their promotions quicker than others. I think it's just it's a little leg up.
I think it's like, sorry, as you're watching me scroll on the screen, I'm trying to go back through some of, like,
We have a lot of research.
There's a lot of research. I was like trying to find, like there were things I had like pointing out in my brain. I'm trying to look and find it so that I'm not misquoting anything.
I mean, I think for the people that are listening here, if you are an athlete, you get this. This is not rocket science, and this is not something new that we're telling athletes going, hey, your skill set helps. I think for us, especially in the business world, broadly, and I use that term very broadly, you need the research and the numbers to back you up. You need to build that business case. And I think any of us who have been athletes at any level have that gut feeling going, yeah, it absolutely helps. You ask anybody. But what has really moved the needle for us is actually putting the numbers behind it. Ironically, EY is an accounting company, so numbers are important, but honestly, that's really where we have gotten a lot of conversations started, is because we have put, and I don't know if you can go to the causation part, but the correlation is really, really strong. And that's where we sort of start a lot of the discussions, be it about talent diversity, be it about gender equity. I think there's many places that those numbers can take you.
What I wonder about, and again, I'm probing out of curiosity, not out of spite. I wonder, so in my brain, I feel like I see this, what's the word I'm looking for? This image, or this stereotype. There we go. Let's get my brain to work. This stereotype of, like, if a woman's in charge, she's this like bossy bitch and nobody likes her. But then like if a man does the same thing, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
So I think about the skills and that's required to be a leader. And I think you and I would agree that I think obviously that sport helps teach those skills.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, and I think the website touches on this a little bit, if the ability for women to rise to, their potential, if that's their goal, to be a C-suite executive, is in part by having that common language, because so many men compete in sports, and competitive men tend to go into business because we can't literally be, we become fathers, but we can't be mothers, which is a whole different role. So I this is a sidebar, but somewhat related. I remember a friend at one time mentioning to me, like, women have children, men build businesses because they can't have children. So just thinking about like that paradigm. Anyway, I wonder if sport gives a common language between the genders, and then makes it less of a disparity and less of that stereotypical like she's a bitch for doing this or that. Like, do I have any thread of truth or relevance here, or am I just like spouting nonsense? Please help me out.
No, I think there is a common language of sport, and not to be cliche, but sport is a universal language. It doesn't matter whether you're in the favelas in Brazil or on a soccer field here in New York City. If you're playing football, you're playing football, and you're learning skills of sport. So, the spoken language doesn't really matter. But I think there are themes that come out to level that playing field. And sure, there might be sort of gender stereotypes around them, but I think the self-confidence, the grit, the purpose, are sort of agnostic of gender or sex. I really think that these skills do a leader well, irrespective of sort of who they are or the industry that they're in as well, because you have a lot of industry sort of stereotypes that can play into leadership positions too. But yeah, like I said, that the grit, the purpose, the resilience, which has, especially in the last couple of years, been the word of the minute, to know how to be resilient, know how to be agile, both in business and for your teams. And I think there's a level of an athlete, irrespective of gender, they know how to put their teams together to really capitalize on the skill sets that they have. They know how to put their players on the field, theoretically. So I think those kind of traits span across everybody.
Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like, I did for the longest time, and I still do, kind of, because I come from a running background, espouse the idea that like running is life, and there's all these, parables and analogies you can have between the language of running and the language of life or business. But sometimes I wonder about, and this was a question, so we'll get to this year's question in a bit, but I have a question at the end of each episode where I ask people the same question for an entire year. And a couple seasons ago, I asked everybody, what's the purpose of sport?
Yeah.
And, I got a lot of different answers, but one of them, I think, is possibly teaching life skills, right?
100%.
It's a relatively safe, in that consequences of failing pretty low, generally speaking. Like, you lost, or like, obviously some people,
the ego, but
right, but
it's not going to change your life necessarily.
Yeah, right. Probably not going to become destitute unless you illegally bet on your own team and bet the house or something. But just like it's this place that we can work on some of those soft skills.
Absolutely.
Working in a team, being a leader, being a follower, knowing when to step up, when to step back, how to communicate effectively. Like, all of those things are important, whether you're a small business entrepreneur like I am, or whether you're going to work for a Fortune 100 company. Like, you're still, no matter what you're doing, you're dealing with people, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes I think about maybe that's the ultimate purpose of sport, is like really being this kind of playground for these life skills for us in many different facets.
100%. And I think one of the most important, you listed a lot of them, but one of the most important that I see is learning how to fail and taking that failure as feedback, and being able to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and course correct and move on. And that's, be it in a football game, be it in a business meeting, because not all of those go as planned as well, but being able to sort of take the L and learn from it is, look, I think it's one of the most critical life skills, not letting it end with the loss, making sure that it's, you have to get back up more times than you fall down.
Yeah. I mean, you had an easy pickup there with you fall off the horse and you get back on.
Yes.
But you didn't go with it.
I know, I'm sorry. I figured I'll look for another place to put in a riding analogy. There's plenty of them. Just lead a horse to water.
We couldn't have had a better setup for that. No.
I think I've fallen off a lot of times. Maybe I don't want to relive that.
That was the only thing I thought. I was like, maybe you're like, oh no, it hurts more than people let on.
It does. You learn how to do it well, though.
Yeah, I would hope. Well, I mean, I would hope you minimize the falling off. But
possible, yes.
as you said, failure is
control it.
feedback.
Yeah, right.
Now we've gotten off course.
Sorry.
So I did, before we run out of time, I did want to ask you a little bit. I want to ask you a little bit about, you mentioned like EY's developed various programs over time. So trying to get my head around all of what it is that they and you do. Are you going out knowing now, you've got the numbers to back it up, knowing now that, okay, the overwhelming majority, not just vast majority of C-suite women have some kind of sport background. Are you going out to like youth to advocate, hey, let's get you into sport? Are you, I think you mentioned, trying to support Olympians as they retire. What is it that you guys are actually doing to try to foster this environment, I guess?
Absolutely. So, I mean, look, it spans from, kids who are 5-6 years old to, multiple time Olympians, potentially in their 30s, in their 40s, looking for a new career. So it's a big playing field that we're covering. We really, from the EY perspective, our focus is on athletes who are moving into that next chapter, whether they want a professional career, whether they're starting a business. But we absolutely see the value in making sure that kids stay in sport, and young girls in particular drop out of sport more at a much higher rate in their sort of early teen years. And it is so incredibly important to make sure that we're working with organizations who specifically work in those areas, like the Women's Sports Foundation here in the US and headquartered in New York. We have a wonderful relationship with them, and they're doing great work in making sure that for young girls, sport remains a priority. We know actually a piece of research that we did a while ago, and it's probably buried in one of the reports we have. If girls stay in their sport, playing sport just at a school level, it doesn't even have to be competitive, their post-college salary is 7% higher just by staying in sports. So there are and like we've just been talking, the life skills, there are so many great lessons to be learned, and there are wonderful organizations working to make sure that young athletes are supported, be it weekend warriors or those that are looking at going on to professional sports. For us, it's really making sure that we're tapping into athletes at that, as they're looking towards retirement, which I know can be a superstitious word, but we want to be having those relationships and conversations with athletes for as long as we can. And when they do decide to step off the field is when we sort of enact our programs and transition support. But we've obviously been doing this for a little while, so athletes are coming to know us, but we also do go looking for athletes, as any big business would be facing right now. The war on talent is fierce, making sure that we're getting people with the right skill sets, the right mindsets, diverse backgrounds is really important to make for a successful team and a successful business, and athletes are a part of that. So we do proactively seek athletes as well when we see business opportunities that could fit an athlete's skill set.
I think it's good to know that there's at least somebody or an organization out there to help that transition. I've had a number of Olympians on the show over the years, and I seemingly always ask them about the transition because I know it can be difficult. I mean, even for people who weren't Olympians, who were collegiate athletes, who were high school athletes,
absolutely, yeah.
Whatever it was, it just that moment of demarcation where you're no longer part of that team or that club or that sport that you had identified with for so long. And I asked the Olympians because often they've been in it the longest. So it's like it's even more ingrained. And I ask about it just because I think we talked about this before we were recording. Just the idea of transitions, that we all go through transitions,
Absolutely.
regardless
Yeah.
of whether you ever did sport or not. And if you're listening to this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, then likely you did or do. But that's another life skill. I feel like it's like understanding deeply that you are more than your sport, your job, your title, your whatever, and that you have the ability to reinvent yourself if you want to look at it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but also not tie your self-worth to, I'll say, output.
It's difficult, and for so many years, especially once they get to the professional or Olympic level, your descriptor as a person has been your sport.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Kristy, I'm an equestrian, or whatever, whatever it might be. It is how you describe yourself, and naturally it is wrapped in the identity, and that is absolutely okay. But as an athlete, being able to see that you're more than that, you don't have to get rid of it. And it's something that I talk to all of our athletes about. It's like, please don't forget your sporting experience once you've been in the working world. It's the first thing to get dropped off a resume or your LinkedIn profile. Like, your skills are still really valuable, but how you talk about them is what probably needs to change a little bit, and having it be a piece of you, but not the whole of you. I think from a mental transition piece, and it's hard. It's really hard because they do lose their identity, and some are more adept at figuring out who they are beyond that, and others struggle, and that's why we want to be supporting people as well.
Yeah. Kristy, as we're starting to run down on time,
Sure.
as I mentioned earlier, I have a question for everybody each season. So I'm going to ask you this season's question. This comes from me to me from a friend who is pertinent to this conversation because I mentioned her a number of times, but I haven't just given her more descriptors. She's an entrepreneur friend of mine.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find the stat. It was in one of these research articles you'd had. There's basically like, there it is. Only 2% of women-founded companies in the U.S., for example, reach or exceed the U.S. $1 million in revenue mark.
Mm-hmm.
That would be her. She's a very amazing woman, runs a very cool company. She suggested this question to me because she's big on helping women succeed, helping people succeed, and knowing that this is a weak point for a lot of people. And the question that she wanted me to pose this year to everyone is, how do you celebrate your wins?
Oh my goodness, I feel like I need to know her.
I can introduce you. I'm sure she'd love to talk to you.
And I don't like that question. But it's so interesting. I think there's a couple of ways I can answer that. I think in the workplace, I think making sure, for me, the win is about the team as well. And sure, I might have had a bigger role than others, a smaller role than others, but making sure that and as I've moved through my career, this has been done for me as well, that the doors are open for, my team that either reports into me or the new people coming out of college, making sure that the credit is given where it's due and the win is for the team. I don't know if I'm articulating that exactly how I want to, but it is, for me, it's really important to make sure that I'm not celebrating a win alone in a room, because it would never just be me. There would be a lot of people around. So, and personally, I think tend to shy away from that. So I might do something with my office door closed, but I think for me, being able to own the success and not be shy about it, that's me personally. To take motivation from it. So does that answer the question?
I think so. I think you got it in. Kristy, if people want to learn more about EY, the programs, see what you're up to, any of that kind of stuff, where can they find you, do that, learn more?
Absolutely. Yeah, everything, all my details, all our social media channels are on our website, so ey.com/athlete programs. But pretty much if you search on any channel, it's just EY athlete programs, and I'm sure we will come up. We're on Facebook and Twitter. We've got our website, and my email details are on the website as well. So people can reach out directly if you have questions, want to get involved, want to talk about it. We don't want to be the only voice in this conversation. We want to bring as many people into it as possible. So if you have great ideas, I would love to connect.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thanks so much, Jesse. It's been great.